Learning meditation need not be arduous. Despite the lies of sourpuss teachers. And by the way, sourpuss teachers are nothing new. Way back in Tibet, there was a. Even in the Yellow Hat sect, which is known for its crankiness, there were some people known as grim faced geshes. So this is nothing new in the world of meditation. But despite the lies they might tell us, we can't fuck it up. We won't make some mistake and poof, find ourselves in hell as if there was such a place. We can't meditate wrong and find ourselves all of a sudden transformed into a slathering fiend. We can't become more confused than we already are. That's not meant to be a backhanded compliment. The wisdom we seek is only a breath away. The wisdom the Buddha referred to is not the cleverness to make a longer lasting light bulb. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to sit in the dark. Light bulbs are awesome. But what the Buddha promised was the wisdom of letting go, not not the cleverness of belief of practicing skullduggery and practicing a pseudo spiritual double talk, but simply the wisdom of letting go, both intellectually and emotionally and physically. Despite the lies of cruel mentors, we can't help but help others. I remember one time. So I've been disabled my whole life. I have a host of disabilities. And there's a special type of narcissist that is drawn to the physically damaged. And most narcissists say similar things as if they were operating from an invisible playbook. I remember one time a sexual assailant was held me down and said, "I normally don't do this. This must be your fault." Wow. So sociopaths and psychopaths and malignant narcissists might say cruel things. I've had back in the 80s when I was studying to be a Christian minister, I had numerous mentors. One of them was particularly cruel, and he was forever, whenever I would try to do something, he would just tear me to shreds. And the fact of the matter is, the way meditation works, of noticing and releasing, the fringe benefit of this very simple, very powerful meditation is that we find ourselves flowing more and more from centered spontaneity. When our choices and utterances and deeds are flowing from this centered spontaneity, we cannot help but do good. We cannot help but be an enlightening influence upon others, regardless of what naysayers might say. The villainous will blame us. The villainous will... Oh, what's that phrase that Freud used? It may come to me in a few minutes. But whatever they accuse us of, they've probably already done themselves, or are scared they have done, or are scared they will be found out. And when we look at the life of the Christ, or the life of the Buddha, or the life of the sage, founders respectively of Christianity, Buddhism, and Taoism, they were maligned. 2/3 of them, at least, were assassinated torturously. So enlightenment is not a popularity contest. There's a late British author whose name eludes me, who's famous for having said, "To be hated by some people is the greatest compliment." There are always going to be some cruel people prancing about the countryside, doing and saying dreadful things. That doesn't mean they're right. Fools might believe them, but that doesn't mean fools are right. Just because a bunch of idiots sit around in a circle jerk convincing themselves the earth is flat doesn't mean it is. And just because someone tries to put tape, a metaphoric kick me hard sign on our back while disguising it as a friendly embrace doesn't mean we deserve misfortune. Now I've got bad news and good news. When you meditate properly, and don't worry, I'll give you the nuts and the bolts in a few minutes, difficult things will come up. Those difficult things may be lost memories. They may be fantasies. They may be a blend of the two. Those painful things could also be thoughts or intentions or emotions. Or they could simply be perceptions. For fascism and genocide are running rampant on our little verdant sphere we call a planet. And yet, the discomfort that comes up in meditation need not be permanent. There are techniques we can employ, moronically easy techniques so easy they insult the intellect, that help us not only to endure the difficult things that come up, but to benefit from them in a way that can even feel good physically and emotionally. How ironic, not in a masochistic sort of way, although there's nothing wrong with that. And so if your teacher tells you, that boredom is unacceptable and that suffering is inevitable and it's going to be horrible and you got to gut it out for the length of free culpas, no, they're mistaken. Find a better teacher. The fourth enlightenment factor is joy. The Buddha taught that enlightenment could be accomplished in a week. Now, of course, the Buddha's definition of enlightenment might not be the definition that elitists use to overwhelm us. Enlightenment is not about what we feel. Enlightenment is simply about mastery of the Buddha's techniques, of love and letting go, of noticing and releasing. When we get so good at them that we practice them spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively, that's enlightenment. Also, that's a spicy meatball, eh? But let us not underestimate boredom. Boredom, despite the fools who would tell us that only boring people get bored, boredom is not an indictment. I hope I spelled that correctly. Boredom is a symptom that our dopamine, that in the vernacular, we're out of dopamine. Our body's not releasing dopamine usually for several reasons. We ignore that at our peril. Dopamine issues are not trivial. They can be lethal, which is why again and again and again I stress that meditation is not a silver bullet. It's a powerful tool. It's a useful tool, but it's not the only tool. Pick any letter in the alphabet. How about W? W is a lovely letter, but there are other letters. We need all the letters if we're going to spell the words in the dictionary. We need to make smart lifestyle choices that will support our endocrine system. Choices like getting enough sleep, getting enough sunshine, fresh air, exercise, eating a whole food vegan diet, which you can do on a budget, cultivating our friendships, having recreation. These things are so important. When we walk out, when we work out, make it as vigorously as we sanely can. Please don't exacerbate your pre existing injuries. You know, whether it be walking, whether it be geriatric step back squat thrusts, whatever you do, do it in a way that not only exercises your heart and your biceps, but your endocrine system. And listen to your body. When your body says, I'm bored, it's time to apply the right tools. And sometimes the right tool is just taking a break. Sometimes the right tool is doing something that you know will give you a bump in dopamine, a sustainable bump in dopamine. Um, and don't let someone tell you that you're supposed to suffer. Just as moths are drawn to porch lights, likewise, people stuck in patriarchy, people stuck in the tyranny of being rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, or drawn to positions of power, whether or not they earned them. And from these positions of power, they often make the lives of good hearted people miserable. This is not only true of spirituality. This is true in the secular world, this is true in the vocational world, this is true in the recreational world. Wherever there are humans, there's going to be a certain demographic that are making life miserable for everybody else. I can't tell you how many monasteries I've lived at where the people in control, the people with the power, the people calling the shots, were cruel and ignorant. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. If a person or a process or technique makes you miserable, then either you're not doing it right, or it wasn't explained right, or it ain't for you at this time, if ever. We evolve the capacity to notice what's going on externally and internally, not because of a flaw in our philosophical life view, but as a survival instinct. I'm glad we each have the capacity to notice whether things are helping us or harming us. I'm glad that we can our body can tell us to stop what we're doing, even if we don't know what to do next. These things, these mechanisms can serve you. Everything I just said is summed up in the third verse of the source text of Dzogchen, known as in Tibet as Doje Sampan Nam Kache, forgive my pronunciation, which can translate as the total space of Vajrasattva. It was composed by Prahe Vajra, and the third verse reads, phenomena do not move the authentic condition. Since self-originating wisdom is beyond searching and liberating itself, it also shows the path of liberation. The authentic condition is that which we experience as we physically relax into our exhalation. And I'll give you idiot-proof instructions in just a minute. The ultimate truth is not a great philosophy to be mastered. It's not a belief to be embraced. The wisdom of letting go is experienced viscerally as we physically relax into our exhalation. Regardless of what's going on, regardless of whether politicians lie, whether people get exploited, or whether a next door neighbor's baby laughs, regardless of what's going on, as long as we're alive and our autonomic nervous system is going to make it possible for us to experience the authentic condition of physically relaxing and mentally releasing. That wisdom of letting go is not dependent upon. Oh, I'm sorry, I should just read this. I'm pushing the wrong button. Okay. Phenomena do not move the authentic conditions. Self originated wisdom is beyond searching. We do not experience the wisdom of letting go because we've read 10,000 books in 10,000 years. We've experienced the wisdom of letting go because we're no longer fighting the factory installed wiring of our autonomic nervous system. In liberating itself, it also shows the path of liberation. Later in this text, we read that because it is so easy, it is difficult. When we get out of our own way and we simply sit and vulnerably notice as we breathe in, physically relax as we breathe out, not only do we feel better, but other people begin to emulate us, if not consciously, then viscerally. But that is what we have evolved to do. We can become little lighthouses, not, annoying people who dress up in polyester suits and knock on people's door on a Saturday morning and try to sell them the watchtower. But just by being who we are, authentically, vulnerably, we can have an effect on this ridiculous world around us. And now that I have blathered, let us now prepare for our opening chant and meditation instructions, as well as meditation practice, after the next 40 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Like the Mashugana I am, I spent more than 8 hours a day for more than 30 years studying, practicing, and reverse engineering every teaching and every practice of every sect of Buddhism, so you won't have to. I play the Yoda to your Luke Skywalker so that you can easily and quickly become the person that your dog already thinks you are. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. We do not need to pray to a real or imagined entity to meditate. However, just as a sprinter has a visceral reaction to the sound of a starter's pistol and the sight of a finish line. Likewise, I found that most people like to have sort of like bookend their practice with a little love recitation at the beginning and a little love recitation at the end. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use words to exercise our loving intention. Our first recitation is going to be literal in verbiage, and it's going to employ the triplet chant together. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on thee, Buddha's example, instructions, and students. These three terms are so useful that over the centuries they've earned the metaphoric nickname of the three wish-fulfilling jewels. For our second and final recitation, our second and final recitation is not only concise but also highly figurative. And we're going to employ the bookend chant together. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. Let's review the nuts and bolts of mindfulness and meditation, which are known by many names, such as Sati, Passaddhi, Zen, Proto-Zen, Chan, Dhyana, Mahamudra, Mahasamdi, Ati Yoga, Dzogchen, and even Trekcha. Despite the fanciness of these names, it doesn't have to be complicated. Let's begin with mindfulness. Every time we breathe in, whether we know it or not, every time we breathe in, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system. It's so fundamental, it's not even in our brain, it is in our spinal cord, specifically in the thoracic region that corresponds with our rib cage. It is wired in such a way not to support us in active concentration, because that just makes us cranky, but instead to help us to simply perceive, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly, as is inferred by inhalation's 12-syllable recitation, perceiving this very turbulent play of mind. What are some of mind's antics? Due to its sensory organ, our mind sees, hears, feels, tastes, smells, and the like. Internally, our mind emotes, intends, reasons, recalls, and imagines. Now, a reasonable question at this point would be, well, then what do we do with all this stuff that we notice? And the answer, quite simply, is we meditate. But how does that work? Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we wind up accessing our parasympathetic nervous system. It too is in our spinal cord, but this time in the lower lumbar region and at the tippy top of our cervical region. It is evolved to support both our physical relaxation as well as our mental release, as is inferred in exhalation's 12 syllables, relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. So it's not our job to superstitiously and rigidly cling tightly to and believe the idea that our minds are literally non-graspable. It is not our job to practice the pseudo-intellectual skullduggery involved in trying to convince ourselves and others that the mind is literally non-graspable. Way back in 4th grade, they should have taught us that not all statements are literal. Some are similes, some are metaphors, some are hyperbolic. Consider this. Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during the previous inhalation can now feel as if it was as a non-graspable. It's a vast empty void. It could feel as if it was as non-graspable. Well, consider this. Imagine it is a beautiful day. It's a bright, shiny, cloud-free morning. The sky looks beautiful. You reach your hands towards the sky. You splay your fingers. Quick like a bunny, you clasp your hands into fists. You pull your hands back to your face. You open your hands, and what do you see? You don't see any blue. You don't see any sky. Why? Because the sky is literally non-graspable. So that becomes a source of metaphors. And an abundant source of metaphors. It's a source of metaphors such as birthlessness, selflessness, deathlessness, emptiness. These are just ways of describing how it feels when we physically relax in harmony with each exhalation. So there. So let's strap on 2 imaginary training wheels upon the metaphoric bicycle that is meditation. And together as a team, Let us meditate as profoundly as Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo. We'll start off with the double training wheel exercise. That's 12 syllables per breath. Let's play with this right now. Let's get rid of one of two imaginary training wheels. As we transition from the 12-syllable exercise to its 3-syllable counterpart. As we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite "Notice this." As we exhale, we can silently and mentally recite "Relaxing." One of my Chinese meditation teachers claimed that we feel pain as we sit to meditation. That's just bad karma working through our body. Bullshit. Malarkey. If you're in pain, make the subtle adjustments necessary to alleviate that pain. I didn't follow that advice. Because I ignored the pain in my body, I developed bone spurs, which tore up the lining in my hips joints. I wouldn't wish that on anybody else. Listen to your body. But when you've done all you can and your body's still uncomfortable, here's how we can harness that momentum of pain. As we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite "Sensation." And as we exhale, we can continue silently and mentally reciting "Relaxing." This is not meant to make us ignore our pain. This is not meant to make the pain go away, but this harnesses the momentum of the experience and harnesses its kinetic energy to turn the metaphoric shafts and gears of our imaginary meditation machine. And for some strange reason, this makes life a little easier. When we feel ourselves in the grip of a strong memory, we can play with recollect, relaxing. And there's always recollection's cousin, imagine relaxing. As we transition from the three-syllable exercise to its one-syllable counterpart, it is as if we are tossing aside the final training wheel. You'll notice we've had to take poetic license with these labels. We could replace the word sensation with form, the word emotion with feel. We could replace the word recollect with then, and the word imagine with dream. The basic meditation is simple. As we inhale, we could silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this. And as we exhale, we could silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease, which functions as a synonym for relax. Just as man was not made for the Sabbath, but Sabbath for man, our job is not to just force ourselves to robotically recite this ease, regardless of what's going on. We're supposed to dance with our experience, not wrestle with it. So if you see a light show behind your eyelids, see ease. If you become incredibly aware of the ambient sounds in your environment, hear ease. If you find yourself rehearsing a conversation, think ease. So we're not trying to control our experience. We're simply noticing it, harnessing it, and relaxing into it. A fringe benefit, as I've mentioned often, a fringe benefit of this exercise is the highest love, which is spontaneous and uncontrived. This centered spontaneity, love's centered spontaneity, is intended to influence our choices and utterances and deeds, making us more like Qui-Gon Jinn and less like Mace Windu. Mace Windu, bless his heart, he meant well, and his way of going through life was through enthusiastically following laws and rules. Qui-Gon Jinn was all about flowing with the will of the Force. doing so, like Qui-Gon Jinn, doing so does not guarantee prestige and popularity. In fact, it can, in a world where the inmates have taken over the asylum, it can almost guarantee we won't get prestige and popularity. But it can give us happiness and fulfillment, which is probably even better. So, a prominent Theravada monk sat in meditation. And when he opened his eyes, he realized that two girls in bikinis, because he was meditating in a park, had joined him. And he was horrified at what people might think, and so he skulked away as quickly as possible. What a shame. What if he had woken from meditation and turned to the girls sitting next to them and asked if they had any questions about meditation, and then answered their questions and perhaps helped them on the path? Wouldn't that have been better? That would have been the path of Qui-Gon Jinn. Skulking away, that's the path of Mace Windu. Despite the ravings of Mace Windu, many a Jedi has explored life's carnal pleasures, sometimes with other Jedi. And yet they remained in the Order, and yet they did not turn to the dark side, despite the fears and the ravings of the rigid-minded. Our life is simple. The essence of morality is nonviolence. The essence of morality is kindness. If our kindness is informed by centered spontaneity, we can either behave perfectly or get a great education. We do not always have to label. Sometimes this is enough. But when we feel like we are getting beat up by a strong experience, the labels may be useful. Not to get rid of the experience, but to make the most of the experience. Let us seal this practice with a bit of the old chanting, beginning with kind ethics and concluding with the 4 immeasurables. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness was spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging, freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel if you wish. In approximately 11 and a quarter hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's morning meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.